am attorney John Redmann. Thanks for joining us for this special election edition of John Redmann Power of Attorney. Today we will be speaking with attorneys Marissa Hudoburat and Sara Lewis, who are both on the ballots this coming August 15th, 2020, seeking to be elected the next judge of New Orleans' First City Court. Before we bring each of the candidates on, let me take a moment to tell you a bit about the court involved. Here is what you need to know about First City Court in New Orleans. First, it is a court of limited jurisdiction, which means that you can't bring any type of claim there regarding anything worth any amount. It is limited to civil matters, so no criminal cases, and it's limited to claims that have a value under $25,000. That includes things such as personal injury matters, businesses suing businesses, contract disputes, property damage claims, and lots more, as long as the estimated value of the total claim of any person is limited to something valued at under $25,000, not including interest, court costs that may apply. This court also handles, and this is important, evictions and related landlord-tenant disputes, which we know will be a major part of that court's docket. In this pandemic, we know it's going to be a big deal. A lot of people can't pay their rent under the situation we're facing. So how do these candidates intend to deal with that? That is among the questions we will be asking these candidates, so stick around. Let me tell you about the candidates. Ms. Hudoburat graduated from Loyola Law School in New Orleans in 2010. She is an associate attorney at Glago Williams LLC, where she specializes in civil litigation cases. Ms. Lewis graduated from Tulane Law School in New Orleans in 2009. She is an associate attorney at Wall, Bullington and Cook LLC, where she handles environmental litigation as well as criminal defense cases. We look forward to letting each of these distinguished candidates speak with us. Tell us about their qualifications, their campaign agendas, and generally about themselves, so each of you watching this and going to vote in this race can better decide who you'd like to support and vote for. So stick around. After the break, we'll get started. Welcome back to John Redmann, Power of Attorney. Now let's bring on the two candidates for judge in the August 15th, 2020 election and let them tell you more about themselves. By coin toss before the show, we determined that we will start first with the interview of attorney Sara Lewis. And then after that, we will interview attorney Marissa Hudoburat. Ms. Sara Lewis, welcome to the show.
Hi, John. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Well, we're delighted to have you. So I want to correct something I said in the intro. I believe I said you were an associate attorney at your law firm. In fact, you are a partner, and that's a very significant accomplishment. So congratulations on that accomplishment, and my apologies for getting that wrong earlier. So why don't we start with a little bit about you, and why don't you tell us where are you from, a little bit about your roots, what are your ties to New Orleans, and what made you care enough about the city to put yourself through the mill of a campaign and to run for this very important job?
Sure. So I grew up in Buffalo, New York. My mom moved to Buffalo from Italy when she was 25 years old. My grandparents moved along to help raise us shortly thereafter and never learned any English. So I grew up speaking Italian fluently, and I grew up helping translate for them, taking them to grocery stores, weirdly enough, banks. That seems like a weird thing for an 8-year-old to be doing, but it really taught me that skill. Taught me the skill that people can come from really different backgrounds, really different cultures, speak completely different languages, and that they still deserve to be understood. They deserve to have their problems solved. My father's family, I'm the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors. They also came to this country after World War II. So it also teaches you a lot about having compassion for people and, treating people with dignity and respect, no matter their backgrounds, their religious affiliations, or anything like that. My sister moved to New Orleans actually before me. She'd like to say she brought me here. She came right before Katrina in 2004, and she claims I followed her shortly thereafter in 2006. Now my mom we moved her to the Gulf South. So we basically, you got all of us. All the Lewises are here now. You're stuck with me. Unfortunately, you can't get rid of me.
What do you say to people, especially young people, about the importance of the right to vote, the importance of being able to have a voice in electing a local judge, and why is this particular seat important if you don't think you've already answered that particular part of the question?
Sure. Well, I think that something we all have to remember is that all of our votes matter at all of our elections. I think that we are in a period of time, particularly now that is becoming ever more evident, it's really important. And one of the great things about being on the campaign trail is getting to see how involved people in New Orleans are in the community, how much, I get to see on a daily basis people who volunteer their time, their efforts, their careers, and, just their emotions to this city. And part of doing that, part of our civic duties, is making sure that we know who we're electing, making sure that the people who represent us, both in our state legislature, our federal government, and also at the local level, having our judges that are elected represent our community and, do the hard work that is, it's a public service. Being a judge is being a public servant. So everybody's vote matters, especially in these elections. August 15th, it's going to be it's supposed to be a low turnout election. So each and every person who goes to the polls is important.
Many folks are facing financial trouble due to this COVID-19 pandemic, and many experts predict things are going to get even a lot worse. And we're expecting unprecedented amounts of evictions, which many will be in that court, maybe within just months from now, and it's starting already, we hear. So what, if anything, do you think you may be able to do to deal with what's happening? You got landlords who have to pay their mortgages on property maybe they're still trying to pay off, and you have a lot of people who are worried about keeping a roof over their families' heads. What can you tell voters about that?
In New Orleans, we've had a crisis with evictions even before COVID-19. We had almost twice the national eviction rate pre-COVID-19, 5.2%. It's even higher in predominantly Black neighborhoods, where 1 in 4 people faced eviction over the course of 3 years versus 1 in 24 people in a predominantly white area. I think it's important for judges to know this information and to be up to date on this information. While we can't legislate that, I think a lot of work has to be done on our state, on our local, and on our federal level to deal with this oncoming, the oncoming evictions that will occur. But as a judge, what I can do is I can make sure that people know what their rights are. I can make the process of going to court as easy as possible for people. So one of the suggestions is having, court hearings in satellite areas, New Orleans East, the lower 9th Ward, to make the courthouse more accessible. Jane's Place is a housing group, and they issued a report regarding the eviction crisis, and they issued statistics regarding the claims that resulted in an eviction. And one of the largest indicators that a claim will result in eviction is the defendant doesn't show up to court. So making it more accessible, making sure that people have access to paper copies. 17% of New Orleanians do not have access to the internet. And so making sure people have access to paper copies of what the rules are. So as a judge, I see my job on top of, rendering decisions to be a resource for people in crisis, and be able to point them to the resources that they can use.
Remind our viewers what your number is on the ballot, and if you could sum up your campaign platform.
Sure. Well, my number on the ballot is 396. As you said, Election Day is August 15th. Early voting's already started and goes through August 8th. Part of my platform is that people who represent themselves, particularly people who are facing eviction, which is, one of probably the most difficult thing someone will have to go through in their life, deserve a place where they can go to feel safe, that they feel that they are listened to, that they are treated with respect and they are treated with dignity, that they know what their rights are, and that they're able to express their rights and they're able to have their fair day in court. If it were up to me, we don't have a federal or a constitutional right, to representation in civil cases. So that includes an eviction. If it were up to me, people would have, the right to an attorney for these. But I, as a judge, can make sure, I can't advocate on their behalf, but I can make sure that they know what their rights are, what the law is. I can apply it fairly, impartially, regardless.
What makes you the better candidate in this race for this public servant job as judge?
I've practiced in over 20 parishes in the state of Louisiana. My practice is statewide. And I can tell you firsthand the difference when you have a judge who's prepared, who has reviewed the facts that are before them, who comes into court with an attitude of being compassionate and helping people and listening to people. And that's really, that is the way that people have access to justice. I truly believe that, for our justice system to work, you need to have people behind the bench who are doing their part, making sure that everyone knows what their rights are, making sure that everyone has access to the information that they need. And what we need in our judiciary is we need impartial people who are going to make decisions based on what the law is fairly to everybody who's there, regardless of where they come from.
What can you tell us about yourself, maybe how you dealt with a real challenge in your life, professional life, or maybe something outside of your work, where you had to make a tough decision that would help us gain an insight into your character to help us in deciding this race?
A difficult decision that I had in my career was pretty early on as a newer lawyer. I had to put information in a verified petition for a temporary restraining order on behalf of a client. And the information that I received, I later learned not to be accurate. And particularly as a young lawyer, that's one of the things that I think, you're most terrified about, that you're about to do something wrong that you don't even know is wrong at the time. And so one of the things that I learned about it is that I learned from that experience is, number one, to trust, your instinct. And to also go forward and explain what the truth is. So I went forward, I went to the judge, we called in the other attorney, we had a meeting, and just to, when you've done something that, is wrong or might not be, even if it's inadvertent, even if it's, outside of your control, to, own the situation, to make sure that the situation is rectified as soon as possible. As human beings, I think we oftentimes like to put aside things that make us uncomfortable, but just to face uncomfortable situations and handle them with as much, dignity and grace as we can muster at the time. And just to make sure, particularly as lawyers, I think that we have a duty, we do have a duty to make sure that we represent people truthfully, honestly, that we are honest to the court, that we are honest to our society, and that we represent people in that way.
Attorney Sara Lewis, thank you for joining us on John Redmann. We're all out of time. Thank you for joining us on John Redmann, Power of Attorney.
Thank you so much for having me.
Best of luck to you in the August 15th, 2020 judicial election. Everyone, please stay tuned. When we return, we'll have attorney Marissa Hudoburat on, and she'll be ready to tell us about her and her candidacy. Joining me now is attorney Marissa Hudoburat. Ms. Hudoburat, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Why don't you tell our viewers, where are you from? What are your roots? What are your ties to New Orleans? And what made you care enough to enter the difficulties and the challenges, the slings and arrows, if you will, of an election to serve this city as a judge in our first city court?
I'm originally from Chicago. I moved to New Orleans to pursue my law degree at Loyola University. And this was the year following Hurricane Katrina. And I've loved New Orleans ever since, and I could not bear to leave this amazing city that I'm so blessed, honored, and proud to call home. So I decided to offer myself as candidate for first city court judge because this is the way that I want to serve the city that I fell in love with over a decade ago. You know, New Orleans is just one of those places that gets to your heart, gets into your heart. And there are so many people here who I've learned from during my career. And being a judge on First City Court will not only give me a chance to give back to this great city, but also give me a chance to help those people who come before me.
What do you say to people, especially young people, about the importance of the right to vote, about the importance of being able to have a voice in electing a local judge, and why this particular seat is important?
I actually went to a high school not too long ago, and they have a young voter initiative, and they're planning on, getting out the vote to the young people and having them, informing them how important it is for all of us to exercise our right to vote. And oftentimes the local elections will get lost in the shuffle, and we're more focused on the main election that's coming up here in November, and that election is definitely important. But on the local level, and specifically with regard to First City Court, we're talking about at any point in time, they may find a loved one or a family member here in First City Court. And it's important to have a judge who understands, who is understanding, who has cared and represented citizens from all walks of life here in New Orleans and understands the challenges that they face. I let them know that it's often referred to as People's Court, and that's because of the number of pro se litigants that come to court. And I tell them that it's everyday people who come to court who represent themselves. And with that being said, these are the judges who are on the front lines and can impact someone's shelter, help them secure a payment for a debt that is owed, and even help resolve a dispute between neighbors.
Many folks are facing terrible financial trouble due to this COVID-19 pandemic. Many people predict that things are going to get worse, and they're already bad. That is, people can't afford to pay their rent. They can't count on the government sending them money every month for long at all so they can keep a roof over their family, over their children's heads. And you got landlords who many of them have to pay mortgages on the buildings, and they count on that to, put bread on their tables. And evictions are already starting, and it looks like it's going to get a whole lot worse. The evictions which are filed in that courthouse in New Orleans. What do you think you can do to try and help people being evicted and landlords who are looking for some sort of relief too?
So as a judge, I will extend the utmost compassion to people from all walks of life who come before the court, always, but especially during this time of the pandemic. If elected, I intend on working with the tenants and the landlords to help them find a way to move forward to the best of my ability. And this may include connecting tenants and landlords with resources that may help them, that can help them resolve their issues, and helping the parties craft a payment plan. I understand that from some of the judges in that court, that landlords can be asked to do a compromise and work with these family members so they could possibly not get evicted and be placed on a payment plan, or urged to afford the family more time for them to find a place to live. I also intend on exploring how the law students from Loyola, Tulane, LSU, and Southern can help, to see if we can have them work with some of these self-represented litigants to help provide them legal advice that they may not otherwise receive. And I've been actually researching the frameworks of law schools in our nation, of their housing law clinics, to propose to our law schools in our state to implement them here. I've also spoken with the executive director of Housing NOLA regarding other resources that may be available to those who may be facing eviction, along with actions she believes would be helpful that I may be able to take on as a judge. And this includes sharing courtroom experiences with our legislators, so they're aware of how the laws affect the public as it pertains to evictions. And this is important because our lawmakers write the laws, and the duty of a judge is not to legislate, but to uphold the law as it is written.
Remind our viewers what the number is on your ballot and what your campaign platform is, please.
Ultimately, I have the compassion, the courage, and the commitment to serve our community well as judge of First City Court. The compassion to have citizens from all walks of life who come before the court feel welcomed, feel respected, and feel that their voices are being heard by a fair and impartial judge. The courage to apply my solid understanding of the law and the commitment to work tirelessly to efficiently serve the public. My number is number 395 on the ballot. Again, my name is Marissa Hudoburat, and I'm running for First City Court Judge.
Tell our viewers why you believe you deserve their vote in this election, and what makes you the better candidate for this public servant job as a judge in First City Court.
My temperament and my legal knowledge uniquely qualifies me to serve our community well as judge for First City Court. My opportunity to serve under 3 judges provided me with the institutional knowledge of the judicial system from the inside. It's given me a realistic look on how efficiently a docket can move while keeping in mind the needs of a judicial staff. Just to be clear, as a judicial law clerk, I actively participated in the daily operations of the courtroom. I was involved in the decision-making process, including the review of the presented facts and evidence, the legal research, and the interpretation of the law. While working in the appellate court under Judge Belsom and Judge Lombard, it provided me with an opportunity to see a wide variety of cases from its inception in the trial court to the judgment that brought it to the appellate court. And as an extension of the judge on the trial court level under Judge Burial, I would also communicate with counsel and self-represented litigants to answer questions regarding procedural requirements. Working on the other side of the bench as a civil litigation attorney with Blagel Williams, advocating for members of the public, gave me the perspective of standing before a judge. I work personal injury cases. I've been involved in the Hard Rock collapse litigation. I've also served as the primary contact attorney in our involvement in class action cases such as the National Prescription Opiate litigation and the Juul e-cigarette litigation. Moreover, I pride myself in possessing an inherent nature to treat everyone from all walks of life with kindness, compassion, and respect. And it is this quality that has given me and continues to provide me with the ability to effectively communicate with a diverse population.
Thank you. We have time for one more question, and I'd like you to tell us, if you would, something about you, something about perhaps how you dealt with a real challenge in your own life, or maybe a tough decision that you had to make that helped shape you, helped shape your life, something that might help us know a little bit better about you in order to make a decision for this election.
I was raised by my mother and my father and my grandmother. And I remember a time we were living on the north side of Chicago. My father was attending dental school, and my mother had to work 2 jobs to ensure that he had the time to study, go to class, and make sure that the bills were paid. We were living paycheck to paycheck. And my grandmother was there, and she was the one who took care of me, helped raise me. While my mother had to work the 2 jobs, my father was busy studying and making sure he was making it to classes. And it's, that tight-knit family. And I remember those times when, it was just rough times. And as I grew up, my father became a dentist, and my mother was able to work in the office with him. And my grandmother had to move back to Australia. And then I had 2 younger siblings. So I took it upon myself to ensure that my siblings were able to be taken care of by a family member while my parents were working, and ensuring that, the bills were paid. And I ended up not living on campus, even though as an undergrad student, you want to have all the perks of living in an apartment by yourself. I made sure that I commuted from home and stayed with my siblings who were in high school and middle school, and helped make sure that they were taken care of and helped them with homework and everything while my parents could work. So that's something that I feel that really shaped me. I remember the hard times, growing up while my mom had to work 2 jobs, and I made sure that I gave back to my family what I know they provided for me by trying to take care of my siblings when they could not be there.
Well, thank you for sharing that insight into you, Ms. Hudoburat. But now I'm afraid we're all out of time, and so no more questions. Attorney Marissa Hudoburat, thank you for joining us on John Redmann, Power of Attorney. Best of luck to you in the August 15th, 2020 judicial election. Remember, Ms. Hudoburat's number is 395 on the ballot. Ms. Lewis's number is 396 on the ballot. You can find out where to vote by visiting govotela.com or by visiting johnredmannpoa.com. That's all the time we have for our show. Thanks to our viewers for coming and joining us today. We hope this show was helpful in empowering you to make a better decision when you get out and vote August 15th. Watch on this station for new episodes of John Redmann, Power of Attorney, coming every month. Also, you can rewatch this episode and past episodes of our show covering all sorts of legal topics by visiting johnredmannpoa.com. Thank you, and we'll see you very soon.